One of the only things that Prodigy does have is a gas station. I think most of the people who drive through town without stopping think it's closed down, but it isn't. The man who runs it, Warren Neal, just has a hard time keeping it looking presentable on the outside. He's pretty old now. I remember when I was young, he used to play Santa Claus on Christmas. When the town hosted their annual hayride and caroling event at the town hall, he looked a bit like Santa Claus in the face, but the real Warren was much skinnier. He was a nice old guy, though, and sometimes he even gave the kids free snacks when they came into the gas station. If nothing else, it was a good place to meet your friends before walking somewhere else. The food and drink inside were cheap enough that young teenagers without steady jobs could usually afford to grab something, and Warren usually had good music playing on the radio. I liked to wait inside and talk to him sometimes when I was waiting for a friend. Usually, I was waiting for my friend Braden. Braden, although I almost never call her that, is technically the most recent addition to the friend group. Everyone calls her Bug. She and I met in middle school when her family moved into town. If anything, she was the unofficial little sister that I had never had. She's only 2 years younger than me, but we had a lot in common, and since I was always one of those weird kids, I reveled in the friends that I had. The easiest way to explain the nickname me and our group of friends have for Braden is this. Braden likes weird things like snakes and frogs and bugs. At one point, I referred to her as Bug, and it just never really died out. When Bug and I hung out, we had a loose routine. It was usually at her house on Friday nights and weekends when she was usually home alone for the large portion of the night. I'd walk from my house to the gas station on Main Street where she would meet me. We would buy some snacks and drinks, walk to her house, and mess around and watch horror movies until we passed out. That Friday night, it was no different than our usual routine. We'd met up outside the gas station and headed inside, saying hello to Warren behind the counter as we made our way in to look at all the snacks and drinks. We were only in there for maybe 30 seconds before Bug excused herself, announcing that she had to pee, and she headed back towards the front of the store. The bathroom was back behind the counter, right near the corner of the building. I watched her go, making peace with the fact that I would probably be standing out here by myself for a while. As I was picking up a bag of hot Cheetos, my favorite, Warren came around the corner. "Hey kid, I'm gonna be in the back room for a little bit. If I'm not back when you and your friend are done, just holler for me, okay?" He jerked his thumb towards the back room, past the counter, as he talked, and I nodded my head at him. "Sounds good." I gave him a thumbs up and a smile, and he nodded, walking back around the counter and disappearing. I turned back to my shopping. As I was browsing the few shelves for what other snacks I wanted to eat that night, I felt a very light tapping on the side of my arm, high up, right below my shoulder. "Excuse me, I think I'm lost." I jumped, nearly right out of my skin. Just seconds ago, I'd looked towards the entrance of the store, talking with Warren. No one else had been in here, unless they had been blending in with the walls. I was also positive that I hadn't heard the door open, and it was a squeaky door, so it would have been hard to miss. But because I was a girl, the only girl in my family, in fact, and I was raised in a very small, rural town, I was raised to be supremely polite to strangers. I didn't like being touched by strangers, but my bewilderment at someone I didn't know tapping me on the arm out of the blue was overshadowed by the nearly automatic kick to be polite and helpful. The shocked part of me was buried pretty quickly. I pulled my gaze away from the junk food shelves and turned around to get a better look at the person who was talking to me. Based on their deep voice, I'd expected a middle-aged man, tough-looking man, but that wasn't what I was looking at. Instead, the person I was looking at seemed to be quite old, still a fair deal taller than me, but so is pretty much everyone else. His skin was very wrinkly, more so than what I thought of as normal. His eyes looked so droopy that I wondered if he could see anything at all. His proportions seemed almost cartoonish, Like how a lot of older people will be drawn with larger facial features and huge, scruffy eyebrows, but no actual eyes. I felt bad for thinking it, but at first glance, he was kind of funny to look at. I shook it off and offered the man a smile, as polite as I could be. Well, if you tell me where you're trying to go, I can tell you how to get there? He stared into my eyes for a full, slow second before answering. I didn't want to count it against him. Maybe he was just an old guy with some processing issues. Maybe he just wanted to think about what he was going to say before he said it. I won't lie, though. Something about his heavy, droopy-eyed gaze was a bit unnerving. I need to get to my family's house. It's on Turner Street. Oh, Turner Street. It's just a couple blocks past here, I said, gesturing to the side as I spoke. Going north, 3 blocks, if I remember right, nearly at the edge of town. The man didn't say anything, and I assumed he was committing the directions I'd given him to memory. I tried to keep my polite smile plastered on my face, not wanting to accidentally offend him, but he was silent for a long time, just looking at me. I can write down the directions if you think you'll have trouble remembering them, I offered, trying to be helpful. Glancing over the man's shoulder at the bathroom door by the back wall, I had begun silently begging for Bug to hurry it up and get back out here, because I was starting to feel uncomfortable alone. Warren was still in the bathroom of the gas station, leaving me and this stranger alone. Is that far? Maybe you could help walk an old man to his home, he offered, and suddenly the alarm bells in the back of my head were going absolutely crazy. I'm actually waiting for a friend, I explained gently. We have other plans. I could call someone for you if you have someone else to help you out. Again, the man stared at me for an agonizing second in awkward silence. I don't have anyone, dear. It's just me. It was at this point in the conversation that I noticed something about the man. The skin around his eyes didn't seem to connect. Like you could slide something under his eyelid in between his skin and skull without hitting or snagging anything. The more I looked, the more weird inconsistencies I could see, and I wondered why I hadn't noticed it before. The side of his face twitched, like he was irritated or had some sort of facial twitch. I'm sorry. I don't think I can help you, I responded, trying to sound confident and firm in my decision. But I'm not entirely sure it worked at all. More likely was I sounded just as uncomfortable and nervous as I really felt. His face twitched again, only this time something was off about it. My eyes flicked away from his, towards the skin around his jaw, less worried about being rude by the second. I think you can. I'm not sure if it was the way he said it or just what he said that sent a shiver running down my spine. It clicked in the back of my head, finally, that I could be in real danger. Again, his face twitched, only this time I saw it. I realized with a slow dawning horror pouring over me, like a slow trickle of icy cold water, that his face wasn't twitching. Something underneath his skin was moving. When I noticed it, I must have pulled a face, because the old man, or whatever was wearing the skin of an old man, reached out his hand and grabbed me by the arm, so fast that I hadn't even fully registered the movement before his fingers were digging into my skin. I recoiled, but only succeeded in bumping into the shelves right behind me. His grip dug into my arm so tightly that it burned, and it made me feel sick to my stomach when I became acutely aware of the fact that I could feel something wriggling against my skin. You said it's not far away. Why can't you help an old man get home? The more he talked, the more I realized that the movements of his jaw didn't quite line up. I reached up and put my hand over his, trying to pry his fingers off my arm, dropping my bag of hot Cheetos in the process. I hated the feeling of touching the thing's skin, much too cold, and every inch moving independently. "Let go of me!" I demanded, feeling the beginnings of panic rising in the back of my throat. "I'll start screaming if you don't let go of me." I was distinctly aware of a subtle, slow hissing sound, and it took me no time to realize at all it was coming from the thing in front of me. I clawed at his hands, and as he tightened his grip to a painful degree, he leaned forward until his face was inches away from mine. As he did, the smell of musty earth and something metallic hit my nose. I could see past the skin hanging loosely around his eyes, and I was sure I could see something moving, like his muscles were alive and slithering all over each other like a pit of eels. Even still, this close, I couldn't see his actual eyes. I didn't know if he even had any. When he opened his mouth, prepared to speak again, I could see the same phenomenon in his mouth. The skin hung a little too loose, like it was made for a different bone structure than the thing underneath it could provide. I also became distinctly aware that there was definitely something moving at the back of his throat. The door to the bathroom opened. The sound of the electric hand dryer was still going, filling the space that felt all too small with just the two of us. The pressure on the side of my arm was gone, and before I could even blink and revel in the excitement that Bug was inadvertently coming to save me, the thing that looked like an old man was all the way across the room and pushing open the door. It didn't look back at me as it disappeared out the door, quickly turning and walking parallel to the building, but I stared after it. I still don't know how it got across the room that quickly. A thought rang hollow in the back of my head, and I barely registered it. He was walking in the opposite direction of Turner Street. When Bug rounded the corner and saw me staring wide-eyed at the door, mouth open like a fish out of water, she furrowed her brow, still wiping her slightly damp hands on her shirt. She asked me if I was okay, and I told her I wasn't sure. Slowly, I bent down to pick up the bag of hot Cheetos I had dropped. I could still feel his hand on my arm, cold, clammy skin, with a distinct feeling of something alive underneath it, uncoiling and squirming right up against the flesh. Remembering the feeling made me want to throw up. She knew something was off about me for the rest of the night, but she didn't prod me too much about it. I did insist that we lock the doors once we were inside her house, terrified that whatever tried to corner me in the gas station would follow us home. If it did, though, I never saw it, and it never did anything weird. I will admit, the thing in the gas station is not the scariest thing I've seen, and I haven't seen it since that day, but I guess that's how life tends to be. Not everything gets the resolution you hope for. I do worry a bit about what could have happened. It moved so fast. I don't know what else it could have been capable of doing, and who knows what it could have done to me if I did agree to escort it home. Either way, I don't like to be alone in the gas station anymore. If Bug is late or has to go to the bathroom, I'll hang around Warren until she gets back. Part of me wonders if the reason I haven't seen it since the first time is solely because I haven't been alone in there since. All I know is that it was trying to lure me somewhere. Some house on Turner Street. I also know, especially now, that there are a lot of things in Prodigy that you should never be alone with.